Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and today I'm so excited to announce that I have writer-director Buddy Chambers, as well as actress Charlotte Horton. How you doing today, guys?
Pretty good.
Phenomenal.
Buddy is writer-director. He has written and directed Bionic Beauty, as well as Blood Money and much more. Also upcoming, he has Violent Origami, as well as The Colony. And then Charlotte Horton, our actress over here, she has also been in Bionic Beauty, and she is in the upcoming Violent Origami and Colony. What can you guys tell us about these movies coming up? I'm really excited about Colony. I got to throw that out there first.
Yeah, we're excited. We're super excited. For Bionic Beauty, it's pretty much a dark comedic parody of different 80s sitcoms, particularly Small Wonder in particular. But because I watched it about a year or so ago, and I just started watching it and going, this is rather dark and more kind of twisted than I initially thought in terms of the premise. So I basically wrote the show, and it's very self-aware, very meta, very darkly comedic. But then there's a point where it gets darker and darker, where, you know, like what would a robot do when it realizes it's trapped in society, which is practically a zoo, and what, you know, wouldn't being around humans just make you crazy. So yeah, that's basically the gist of it, and it's very much a dark parody of not just Small Wonder, different 80s sitcoms, different 80s things. So it's kind of like a mishmash of different things that I grew up on that I love, but yeah, like it's fantastic. It's very darkly comedic, and it gets to the horror as you go along.
Sure.
And then in terms of Violent Origami, that's more of a straight action kind of film. But it's great. I have a great actress, Nina Soul, who would be playing the lead. I worked with her on Blood Money, and she's just this phenomenal actress. And initially I was going to kill her character off in Blood Money, but I kind of thought about it, and I was like, I saw her act, and I was like, I guess you don't see her character die. So, and basically in Blood Money, I paid an homage to the end of The Thing, where Childs and McCready are just kind of like sitting together, and they can't kill each other, but it's just that weird kind of like, okay,
yep,
this is it, you know. It's that just level of just a conversation. And then in Colony, I'm really stoked about that, because that's a project I've been working on, and it's I would say a throwback to 80s monster kind of movies, but also Cronenberg type of body horror. It plays into different things, like which Charlotte and I will talk about in a bit, but different things that I think play to now. And I'm really excited by that, because I think it's kind of going to be a great throwback to things that I loved in 80s horror, and things that play, I would say, very much well, you know, now, in terms of themes and like just paranoia and just fear. So I'm very excited about all these projects, and I'm excited to I'll throw it to Charlotte. Excited to work with her on Colony.
I'll hop in here. Sorry, I wanted to give y'all a little bit of room to chit chat.
No, it's okay.
Well, my character in Colony is fascinating. I don't want to spoil too much of the film, but when you think of terms of psychopathy and sociopaths, there's a lot of elements in the film that I love. When I read the script, Buddy sent it to me, and I was like, you want me to play Lauren? He goes, yeah, I'm like me. I'm like, oh boy, okay, are you sure? And so I auditioned for it twice, and he's like, no, I think you're perfect. I'm like, no, let me read for it, just in case you change your mind. And what I love about Lauren's character is that she has this coldness. I kind of referenced it to the shark in Jaws, just this nonstop movement, and this, it's instinctual. It's not what we would define as evil in a lot of villains in horror, but it just is. It's the way they are. It's
and
not
that's
evil
so
in their
funny,
eyes.
because from what I know of you, I've had the pleasure to become friends with you and Buddy, and it's been a total honor to be able to talk to you guys. You are one of the sweetest, kindest people I've ever met. So to tell you I'm excited to see you play this role in Colony is an understatement. I think it's going to be absolutely brilliant to watch you play this sociopathic character that I've heard about in Colony. I'm with you. I don't want to spoil too much, but like I said, I've had the pleasure of becoming friends with you guys, and this is something that I'm very excited about. And while we're talking about...
It's our pleasure as well.
Yeah.
Huh?
It's our pleasure as well.
Thank you. And check this out right here. Check this out right here. Check this out right here. These are all posters that Buddy's doing too. You guys, they've been working on them very hard. Different artists working on them. There's something that me and Buddy have had conversation about. How important I still feel a movie poster is, and this is something he takes very serious. He takes a lot of pride in the movie posters that he works on. So these are beautiful, man. Like everybody just seen them, rewind them if you want to see them again because they're absolutely gorgeous. But thank you for sharing those with me so I could share them with everybody. Thank you for your deeply rooted appreciation and love of what that can really bring to a film. Because when I think about it, we had this conversation, you and I actually, when we were young, the way that you decided what you were going to watch was based off the movie poster and the VHS cover. Like that's how we decided what we were going to watch. We couldn't YouTube a trailer, you know, like, oh shit, look, there's a shark about to eat a woman. Let's watch this movie. You know, so the fact that you still have this deep appreciation for these, it's so amazing. And before we get into your guys' first horror movie, do you know anything about the release dates of any of these yet, or where we're going to be able to watch them?
Well, Bionic Beauty. Well, let me start with Blood Money. Blood Money, I'm going to put on Amazon Prime. COVID-19's kind of screwed everything up in terms of just releases and everything. So I'm going to have Blood Money on Amazon Prime very soon. Bionic Beauty, we're actually filming this weekend. So starting on Friday, we're going to be shooting that. So that will be a fun shoot, and hopefully we should have Bionic Beauty out. And the intention is to shop it around as a pilot. So we're very excited by that. And Bionic Origami will be the next project that I go into, and we're currently in pre-production on that. And Colony also is being worked on in pre-production as well. So it's like a lot trying to do simultaneously, but everything's just moving ahead. That's pretty awesome.
We were thinking that Bionic Beauty would be probably more a streaming service. I don't want to get sued for saying which possible ones, but
different streaming services.
Different streaming services. I mean, Violent Origami is a movie I would go see in theaters if theaters were open.
Right now, if COVID-19
if
didn't happen.
COVID-19 wasn't happening in Colony, if I wasn't in it, I'd probably really want to see it.
Yeah, she's tapping into a very dark part of herself for this role, and it's like you said, it's very uncharacteristic of her because she's very sweet. But yeah, she goes into a sense of just blank coldness, and it's pretty remarkable to watch.
It's like a Hannibal Lecter type. There's just nothing there.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited. Like I said, from what we've talked about with these movies, it's not just because I'm friends with you guys. I'm genuinely interested in seeing these movies. And you guys seen the posters just a minute ago. If that poster doesn't make you want to see Colony, you're probably watching the wrong channel, because the poster alone, the minute I seen it, I was like, I am in. This is going to be so awesome. So it's so cool, you guys. And please, I'm going to start doing, I've mentioned it a couple times, and maybe by the time this episode airs, we'll be doing it. But I'm going to be doing a weekly update every Monday, a video on the channel, to let people know who's coming up this week on the channel and what's going on in the world of horror. So any updates you guys ever get, feel free to text, email me. I'll be honored to post them up as soon as we know what's going on with any of these. And like I said, I know it's by no fault of your own, because COVID's kind of kicking all of us in the face right now. But as soon as we have anything, please keep me updated, because not just for the people that watch the channel, but for me as a genuine fan, I'm so excited to know the direction you guys are going to be going and where I'm going to be able to see this stuff at. So anytime you have any updates, please send them my way. I'll be so happy to share them with everybody.
Of course.
Thank you, Kenny. And as a fan of yours, I'm looking behind you. Is that the poster for House 19?
It absolutely is.
Yeah, I thought so. So Buddy and I watched it, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I'm so glad. That's one thing I actually pester these guys. Like, you have to watch this movie. Please watch this movie.
I saw it when I was young, but it's been a while. But
it's such a great movie.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie, and I was I'm older than Charlotte, so I was going. I was going. Did you pick out all the people in the cast? I was like, George Wendt. I was like, I mean this Richard Bull from Night Court. I was like, I'm a huge X-Files fan, so I was like, oh, it's Steve Williams, Mr. X, who was one of the cops. I go, fantastic. It was cool. It was
a little known fact: the purple monster that goes after that's his wife. That's Kane Hodder from Jason Fate.
Because he did the stunts in this movie, right?
Yeah.
Really?
So it's really cool just to watch this back and be like, oh shit, Kane Hodder, that's so cool, you know, because now that I'm older, I appreciate this stuff more. And House was my first horror movie. And so, you know, this is one of those movies that I can go back and rewatch over and over and over again. And I always have such an appreciation. And something we've also talked about is I think that with the horror genre, suspense, horror, there's just as much emotion in that as there is in any romantic comedy that you watch out there. You know,
more
horror,
than, I would argue.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, horror definitely has a way to pull on your heartstrings, break your heart, and get you invested in these characters. So to make you not want to see them meet their demise. So I'm completely with you. Horror, especially House, to me, that movie really does play on your emotions with the family and all that. So that's such a great movie to watch. I'm so glad I'm glad you rewatched it, but I'm glad I
loved it.
I really liked it. And I think I told Kenny, I thought it was really a wonderful analogy for Vietnam and the trauma experience by a lot of the war vets and the PTSD. And at the ending, when he finally reunites with his son, when Roger does, it's heartwarming because you see he's overcome the fear of Big Ben, and he finally does what has been haunting him for years. And for me, that's what horror is. It's about overcoming things that we think about in our daily lives and we dream about at night and we fear. And that's why I love horror so much. I know we're horror fanatics.
Oh yeah, we're obsessed with horror.
And I'm so glad we connected because it's so fun to text you guys and talk about horror. So let's get into this real quick. Let's start with you, buddy. What was the first horror movie that you ever watched?
First horror film that I've ever seen. Officially horror, I would say probably Nightmare on Elm Street. Even though I would say unofficially horror was my grandmother took me to go see Dr. Dolittle, and for some reason that movie freaked me out, and I don't know why. The original. I think there's something creepy about the premise that you can talk to animals. But so I remember that freaked me out. But I would say the original Nightmare on Elm Street from '84 was like the first movie where I was like, oh crap, this movie, and it made a profound impact on me because, and I love all horror movies, but I think that one was tough on me because it impacted me because I can't control my dreams, and there's a certain level of terror and not being able to control yourself where you're most vulnerable, as in your dreams. So I would say Nightmare on Elm Street is probably the first horror movie that from my childhood that made an impact on me.
And with Nightmare on Elm Street, it's one of those things where when you watch a scary movie, you want to go to sleep to get away from it. Nightmare on Elm Street, you don't want to go to sleep.
Exactly.
So I definitely understand that. Charlotte, what about you? What was the first horror movie you ever watched?
The first horror movie, and a lot of people don't qualify it as a horror movie. I want to say Jaws, but my favorite to this day, and I had this conversation with my father, would probably be The Shining. I love Halloween. I remember that making a huge impact to me and Jaws, but probably The Shining was the first genuine, just horrific film. There we go. Room 237, sir.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Got it right there.
Oh my gosh.
That's
Room
so
237, yeah.
Yeah. I
was the
just made a
first
joke
film.
about this the other day on an episode. I write everybody down and the times that we're filming. So you are in here. You've always been here.
That was probably my first memory watching a horror film. I'm a big Kubrick fan myself, but that film too, I read the book probably younger than I should have. I don't think my parents were monitoring what I was reading, but that one was one of the first horror books I really read and just was shocked by. And then I watched the film. I know Stephen King wasn't a huge fan of the film, but I think it's one of the best films ever made in cinema.
That's
and it
awesome.
plays on our fears of isolation. It plays on fears of people turning on you, and it's just a really frightening movie.
That's one of the first movies that I remember with a twist ending. Like for me, it was like The Empire Strikes Back and The Shining were like the two for me that had that super twist ending that I didn't understand. So usually I'll ask you guys the questions, but I'm going to bounce the questions back and forth. Okay. So, buddy, let's start with you. When you think of Nightmare on Elm Street, what's the first scene that pops in your head?
Oh gosh, I would say the scene that screws with me the most, like from that series, and just that movie itself, I would say probably when Tina gets killed. I know it's cliche to say, but I just remember the impact when she gets murdered and he's in the room and he can't do anything and she flips around and spins around and knocks him against the wall. Yeah. And then he just drags her up the wall and just kills her. It's so
Shirt,
yeah, the shirt that's like it just cuts open. It's so brutal and so visceral. It stays with you because it's such a. I mean, it's essentially Freddy's first kill, and it's the most brutal. And
what I like the most about that
I mean,
kill, with that kill, I like the fact that you get to see Rod's point of view to not see Freddy. You know, because to me that makes it even scarier. Like, what, you know, not only are you scared because you're watching the love of your life get killed in front of you, but what is happening right now? Like, what is going on? How is this happening to her?
And nobody's in frame for the murder too.
Yeah, and
scary.
also too, I think when you watch the movie initially, you're thinking Amanda Weiss, Tina is going to be the main character, not Heather Langenkamp, and then they do the Psycho where she just gets brutally murdered, and you're just going, wait, what just happened? Like they just killed off the lead, so like all the rules are just thrown out in that kill. So it just you kind of reel from it for a while. Personally speaking, I know I did. Like I just go, wow, I need a moment, but the movie just keeps going. It's perfectly paced, even to this day. It's fantastic.
We were actually just watching Wes Craven's New Nightmare before we got on the phone with you.
I was going to bring that up because in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, they kind of redo that scene when they're in the hospital, but this time you actually see Freddy dragging her up the wall. So I like how in New Nightmare, they pay homage to a lot of, like, if you watch the funeral scene in New Nightmare again where Heather Langenkamp's there with her husband, there's so many characters from the old Nightmare on Elm Street movies that are there at the funeral. You know, so like bringing that to me was like his first attempt at the meta, like what he accomplished so well with Scream. That first attempt was with New Nightmare. New Nightmare was such a meta movie to the fact that Robert Englund's in the movie. He's like, oh, no, I'm having these nightmares about this dream motherfucker, too. I don't want to do that. So, that's
absolutely.
Awesome. So,
absolutely.
You were talking about kills in that movie. I think every kill in that movie is iconic in some way. I mean, from the waterbed kill to the mom at the end getting dragged through. I mean, every kill in that movie, you're just like, what the fuck? I love Halloween, but Michael Myers to me has always been kind of the white bread of the killers. He's just stab, stab, stab. But Freddy is just balls out in this movie. And as a kid, you're like, whoa, like, hey, Tina, look at this. The ooze and shit.
Yeah, I remember.
He does the laugh. He does the laugh. I was trying to tell her too. I love the variety of his kills. That's what I love about Freddy. He's got so much more personality. I was also telling her, telling Charlotte, I was like, look, I go, Freddy has gone through every possible avenue in terms of like, you know, this movies, TV shows.
The phone calls you used to be able to make. I was born in 95, but I remember reading about that. Cause I'm like, I want to call Freddy Krueger.
Freddy pajamas.
Yeah, and it's funny to think of that because I've had this conversation too. But you think about this guy is a child killer. Yes. He kills children. And then we have him promoting Pepsi, like, hey, come get some Pepsi. You know, like, this guy kills kids, and we're like, yeah, Freddy, get those kids.
And in the remake, I think in the 80s, they wanted to suggest he was into hurting the children in other ways, and they couldn't do it. But I know in the remake they made it very clear.
And that's what I didn't like about the remake, to be honest with you. That's one of the parts of the remake that really, really upset me because Freddy, and now look it, I'm not saying being a child killer is better than being a child molester. I'm not saying that. But
both are equally bad.
Yeah, but being that graphic like he was in the movie, like when the new Nancy was like, fuck you, and he was like, oh, that sounds like fun. I was like, oh, stop it. This is fucking gross.
Yeah.
You know, so
you got schemed out by
I think it's more
horrific. I was not a fan of.
I think it's more horrific to be a child molester than a child. I mean, both are obviously terrible, but we weren't. I think in the 80s, I mean, Wes Craven wanted to do it from what I read, but there was so much going on in the 80s with cases like that it was going to be very hard to do that kind of film. But I think the subtlety in the original film was almost better than it being blatant in your face.
Yeah, it was very open ended to interpretation where they let you know he was a child killer. You always kind of there was that lingering thought, that he was a child molester. But I kind of like not knowing.
Yeah.
You know,
in the remake, he never killed any kids. If you watch the remake again, pay attention to that. Right. He didn't kill any kids in the remake. He was a molester, and then he came back to kill the kids because they burned him alive and killed him. So in the remake, he never even killed any kids. So they took the whole story and flipped it on its head. And through most of the movie, you think he's innocent. You're like, shit, maybe he didn't really do this, and those kids lied, and he died for nothing. And then they're like, oh, no, never mind. He touched them all. Go ahead and kill him.
That's an interesting flip, I think, for a remake.
I would love a prequel of, you know, Fred Krueger, not Freddy, Fred Krueger, the murders, like what led to that. I always envisioned, like, I actually, I know I wrote a script somewhere about that, but I always kind of envision it kind of like, do you ever watch Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer?
Mm-mm.
With Michael Rooker. Highly recommend the movie. It's from like 80, it's from the late 80s, like 88. I don't think it came out to 90. It got banned. It was rated like X. So it had a long, but Michael Rooker is so good. If you want to see a fantastic movie about serial killers, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. It is as grim and realistic as you could ever see a movie. I was like, if there was ever a Fred Krueger prequel, I would want it in the lines of that film. So I highly recommend that.
Text that to me when we're done.
All right, cool.
And see, I have a disagreement with Buddy in that sense. I like horror films too much more psychological. I'm also, what do I want? What's the word for it? I'm squeamish with gore.
Okay.
A little bit. It depends on the film. I mean, there's gore in The Shining. There's gore in Nightmare on Elm Street. But I think with franchises like the Saw franchise, it's sometimes I'll like have to like, I'll turn my head. But what we both, I think what all three of us love so much about horror is it's so much more than just a jump scare.
Yeah.
It's way more than that.
When it's done right, you know, you can have I mean, I've seen thrillers, to be honest, that movies that are classified as thrillers that scare me more than any horror movie has. I mean, when a movie is done right and it can play on that anxiety and that fear, and the score has a lot to do with that with me too. You know, these movies can be absolutely terrifying, and you don't have to have a loud noise and someone jumping out at the right time in order for a movie to be absolutely terrifying. So I completely agree with you. You don't have to have, like, I always reference Saw 3 when they're twisting the dude's arms and then his head around. Like, I don't need to see all that. You know, that's not scary. That just hurts my feelings. So Charlotte, are we going to go with The Shining?
I'm going to go with The Shining.
The Shining? Okay. When The Shining, what scene do you think affected you the most and why?
You know, I think this is going to be a really random scene for a lot of people, but I think it's when Jack is talking to Delbert Grady, and you don't see the reflections in the mirror. And he's going, sir, you've always been the caretaker. And you see Jack questioning his own sanity. And for me, that's horrifying, questioning if this is imaginary, if you're saying, but just that switch. I don't remember the actor's name who played Delbert Grady, but he was phenomenal. And he had this politeness and this regality. And then you saw him just switch. And there's something in his eyes that just changes. And he goes, when my wife and daughter didn't like it, sir, I corrected them. And it's like, oh my, like just blood chilling, in my opinion.
Yeah. Because that's when it really starts to sink in what's happening. You're like, it really is hitting you at this point, like, oh shit. You know, so I definitely get it. And The Shining is one of those movies for me that I've only seen The Shining twice in my whole life, you know, and it's not because a lack of wanting to. It's just I've never really, you know, I don't have a problem with The Shining. I'll ask you that question here in a little bit, but I like The Shining. I don't love The Shining, if that makes sense. You know, it's one of those movies that I like it, but I'm not overly in love with it. And I think the reason why is just because growing up, how many times did I hear, here's Johnny? You know, and it's kind of
one of the worst
like
lines, too.
It's like Austin Powers for me. You know, it's like, I like Austin Powers, but there was only so many times I could hear Groovy Baby before, you know, it just, you know, wore me out.
Well, I think too, certain movies in like horror are like, it's like food. You can digest them, and like you have to be in a certain mood to digest them. Like I can imagine like certain people are like, okay, I need to be in a certain mood to watch The Shining, or I have to be in a certain mood to watch Saw or Halloween or whatever. You know, it's just like, it's like, okay, I have my taste, but I have to be in a certain mindset to absorb and to watch this. And I can imagine that with The Shining. The Shining is a fantastic movie, though.
With House, I felt differently when we watched it. I know I'll let Buddy speak for himself, but I always thought it was an analogy to Vietnam and trauma, and I thought it was really, really well done and just beautiful.
Yeah,
But I didn't.
it really is. 'Cause the PTSD part really too, because obviously he's affected by what happened to him because he's writing that new book about it. But then you come home from that and you lose your kid and you lose your wife and you lose your aunt on top of everything else. And then you know, the fish scene is one that always stuck with me too.
Oh yeah, that was creepy.
So you got all this stuff, and the practical effects in that movie are so good, you know.
And the
And so
hanging scene too. That was
the first jump scare of my life.
The fish head scene reminded me of it reminded me of the scene in Evil Dead 2 where Ash basically starts losing his mind, and then he imagines the deer head just laughing at. Yeah, exactly. I go. Oh, I'm totally getting Evil Dead 2 vibes on this. I go, this is so cool.
And that's funny. I think there's a huge comparison between House and Evil Dead, the series. Like, there's a lot of comparisons between the two movies that you could absolutely make.
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot that Fred Decker was involved in the script of this, who did Monster Squad, who did Night Creeps. Oh, yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh. I go, Fred Decker was involved in this. I go, this movie's going to be quality, and it was, you know?
Yeah, such a good movie. I'm so... It's one of those movies that I am from a small town where not a lot of people even know this movie. So I treat it like it's mine. Like when I tell people about it, I'm like, oh God, you gotta like it. If they don't like it, I'm like, the fuck's wrong with you? Go watch it again. You missed it. You blinked.
You've no taste.
Right. Well, you were talking about horror, about having to be in the mood to watch it, like to digest it. I think that what that is a lot of horror movies, you have to pay attention or else you're gonna miss stuff and you're not gonna understand. It's not like, you know, and I'm not bashing any comedies. I'm a huge fan of comedy, but like The Hangover. I could throw on The Hangover and do my editing and do my work and just listen to it and laugh at the jokes. I don't have to be, you know, zoned in to watch it and know exactly what's going on all the time. And I think with horror, if you're not, you know, totally tuned in, you miss out on a lot that you totally, you're doing yourself an injustice by not paying all the way attention to a lot of these horror movies, because that's how important they are, where every scene could make a huge difference in the way that you view the film.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's one of those things where you have to be lasered in and focus on what you're watching, and because I think horror is one of those things where you have to properly absorb it.
Yeah.
So like I know when I watch certain horror movies, like, gosh, just looking at my library over here, my library over there, like I would say like I could understand, like I personally love the Phantasm series. Love it, love it, love it. I mean, I remember it used to air on TNT. Joe Bob Briggs used to play it on Monster Vision. And I was like, oh my gosh. I go, these movies all end on a down note. You know,
Like Carnival of Souls, actually. That's what it reminds me of quite a bit. Have you seen that, Kenny?
What is it?
Have you seen Carnival of Souls? It was a 1962 film, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-mm.
And it had the tall man, which always reminded me of Phantasm.
Phantasm, yeah.
Well, and that's what I was saying. The tall man, who the hell was not scared of the tall man in Phantasm? That ball, you know, like that thing. And Angus, the guy, he's such a dark and brooding looking dude anyway, and he's fucking huge. You know, and who did have nightmares of that? I think it's part 2 where he throws it and it sticks in the guy's head.
Oh yeah, that's part 2.
Yeah, like that shit stuck with me as a kid so hard. That's one of those things that I was just like, oh, that's not fun.
I just remember I was like, this is a dark series, and I think what scared me about that was I felt that you later found out there were kind of rules, but it was very like, it wasn't well defined. It was like a dream or a nightmare where everything is thrown out. Yeah, it's very, anything can happen, and I think that's what terrified me about Phantasm, because it just was probably the most terrifying series.
Bionic Beauty is kind of like that, though, where the lines are kind of blurred between breaking the fourth wall, what's happening, what's not. That's what's
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it gets dark. It gets dark.
Oh, it's real dark.
With Nightmare on Elm Street, do you think that movie influenced your writing and directing style at all, or do you think that's kind of?
Absolutely. I would say Wes Craven. I'd probably say my biggest influence is definitely Nightmare on Elm Street, because, I mean, I go back to that movie like several times a year, and all Wes Craven things. I would say even his, I love Serpent and the Rainbow that he did. It's a fantastic movie. I'm trying to think.
Last House on the Left. What did you think of that one?
I like Last House on the Left, and I like The Hills Have Eyes, and I would say, going back to Nightmare, Nightmare kind of like it preyed on fears, and when I write, especially horror, I try to go to a place where it's like if I feel uneasy even writing it, which happens, where I'll kind of get a chill or I'll just like feel very just weirded out. I feel like I feel like I'm doing the right thing, so I have to keep barreling forward, and I'm sure that's what Wes Craven, John Carpenter, all these filmmakers who I have a great respect and reverence for, they probably do, where it's just like you have to go and tap into the darker parts of your into your mind and your psyche and kind of face your fears. And I would say yes, Nightmare on Elm Street definitely was helped shape me as a writer. Absolutely.
Okay. Still with me, Charlotte?
Yes, I'm here.
There you go. I talked about what scene you think about first, but when it comes to The Shining, what do you think your favorite scene from that movie is? And it could be the funny scene, the scary, the sad. What do you think your favorite scene is in that movie?
I think my favorite scene is when Mr. Halloran and Danny are having the conversation in the kitchen, and he first mentions what The Shining was. I've only been in Hollywood for 8 months. I've been very fortunate since I got out here. Very, very fortunate. But I think that was one of the movies that made me want to get into movies when I first saw it. And he goes, he was explaining to Danny, my grandma and I used to have conversations in our heads. You know what that is, boy? It's The Shining. And there was also the first scene with Jack and Ullman. God forgive me if I'm saying his name wrong. His boss, who in the book he hated, but they had a more cordial relationship in the movie. But he was saying, well, the last caretaker, had cabin fever, and he chopped his kids into bits. And it was, for me, amazing foreshadowing. And I'm like,
yeah.
Oh boy, this won't be happy. And then you notice when they're driving at that one aerial shot with the car driving up the mountains, and you see how vast the overlook is and how absolutely isolated it is. For me, it was very frightening.
Yeah. Well, and I want to touch on something real quick. You said you've only been out there for 8 months. You've been very lucky. You're very talented, and you are one of the most genuine people I've ever talked to. So I wish nothing but the best. You're getting what you deserve. It's not that you've been lucky. You deserve what you're getting. You're working hard. Just because it happened in a short amount of time does not downplay the hard work you do or how genuine of a person you are. So I'm so proud to call you a friend, and I'm so proud of all the hard work you're doing. So please remember that. It's not about luck. You're out there working your ass off. So please continue to do so.
Well, thank you, Kenny. I feel the same way. I know Buddy's only been out here for a few years as well. You've been lucky.
I've been
not lucky, but
I've been out here. I've been out here for a bit longer, but yeah, I can totally concur with you. She's very talented and she works her ass off. So that definitely.
But that goes two ways here, buddy. Because like I said, not only have I talked to you guys about this, but I have the pleasure of calling you guys friends, and I've been able to have conversations with you about other aspects. And I see how hardworking you are. Even when it comes to something that most people don't care about anymore, movie posters, you're so meticulous with your craft that people are going to look at this poster and can, put that over with your film. So that's how meticulous of a worker that you are, that even the littlest things like a movie poster that 95% of people don't give a shit about. There's 5% of people that are going to look at that and still go, I got to watch this fucking flick. So it's all about the hard work you guys do. And like I said, I was so happy that we reached out to each other. We were able to connect and do this together because not only are we friends, but I'm fans of what you guys do and the craft that you guys have and the hard work that you guys do. I've talked to some people that can be super, super douchey about things. You guys are so open and so kind and so hardworking. Sometimes it's hard to get a hold of you guys because you're so hardworking, and that's a good thing. I want you to not be able to get back to me because it means you're working hard. So it's so cool. It's so awesome that I can do this with you guys.
And I can say we're both fans of yours.
We are.
Huge fans. So
I watched a ton of your stuff.
It's very flattering. Thank you.
It really means a lot. Thank you. It's one of those things where I gotta try to keep this head in the screen now. So, so I want to get into a remake subject real quick and a sequel subject. What were your opinions, buddy, on the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street?
Actually, it's funny. Charlotte and I just discussed this. I am not a fan of it. I know it probably makes me seem like a complete purist. I had no problem with Jackie Earle Haley's performance, or actually the cast. That was fine. It's the way they went about it, and I felt that we discussed earlier the beauty of the variety of the kills. My problem with that movie was
Is that what you didn't like?
Well, micro naps were a problem I had. I didn't like that every kill was exactly the same, and they had no diversity. Freddy is not so bland, and I didn't like the whole, we discussed as well, the creepy, you know, child molester thing. I just felt that it wasn't necessary. And again, the cast was great. I thought the cast was fantastic. I mean, I think Clancy Brown was in that movie. Fucking Kurgan. I love him.
Yeah.
I just didn't understand. Like, when I watched this, I just kind of go, why was this movie made? Why couldn't we just do a sequel? I try not to shit on, and I've had to learn this. I try not to shit on anyone that's trying to do a film, because I know how fucking hard it is to do a project and get something done. So it's not me trying to shit on it. It's just not my personal taste. And no, so I must say, no, not a fan of the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street.
I agree with you, but one spot where we're going to disagree on this, I'm going to agree to disagree. I love the fact that we can do that. The only thing I liked about this movie was the micro naps. That's the only aspect that I liked. I thought, because, you know, now they're doing everything they can to stay awake, but now to the point they can't help it. Your body just taking over. So I did like that. But my big problem with this movie, you look at the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and that movie is one of the best when it comes to practical effects. When you look at the scene where Freddy comes through the wall, they cut out a piece of that wall, put a piece of latex there, and they were really pushing themselves out through that wall. And then you go and you watch the new one where they're doing the CGI, and it just looks fucking awful. Like, it looks
CGI
so
looks
bad.
terrible most of the time.
Yeah, so
it looks really bad.
When you take the most iconic movie when it comes to practical effects, I rank Nightmare on Elm Street, The Thing,
Jurassic Park, maybe.
Jurassic, you know, these movies are
not Jurassic World.
Yeah, well,
Definitely The
Jurassic
Thing.
World. At least Jurassic World went its own way. Nightmare on Elm Street tried to do the same effects from the first one with CGI, and it just really bummed me out. Like, if you're going to remake this movie and you're going to make every other change you've made, don't play back on the most, you know, the potential scenes that were amazing CGI, or I'm sorry, practically, and shit on them with your CGI. That to me was just awful. I hated it. So that was Nightmare. Dr. Sleep. Your opinions on Dr. Sleep?
I'm sure your opinion's going to be different than mine. Like, go ahead.
Buddy loved it.
I love it.
I like the book. I felt, I have to be so careful. I felt it was probably a very bold choice to try to recreate any scenes of the Overlook in the original Shining. I actually like the casting a lot for Dr. Sleep. I thought it was actually great casting. I thought the direction was great, but I thought whenever you recreate scenes, let's say the flashbacks in Jaws 4: The Revenge, the flashbacks for me are really cheap. They're cop-outs in my opinion.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what really hurt the film, because I wanted it to be its own entity. I don't want to see it and go, oh yeah, let me compare this to a Kubrick film, because it's not. I didn't love Dr. Sleep.
I liked it.
I know you did.
I have the book.
Here's
and
where
the same thing, I feel the same way about the It remakes. I love the miniseries with Tim Curry back in the 90s. I watched it, I think my parents let me watch it when I was maybe 10. I think it came out, I was born in 95, I think that was 91 or 92 when it came out. And I watched it, and I'm like, that is horrifying, because I would actually look at that clown and be like, okay, he doesn't look that bad. The new remakes, I would take one look at that clown and be like,
And go the opposite direction.
yeah, pissing my pants.
I'm gonna call an Uber real fast.
Here's where we might battle a little bit. I personally, just opinion, I like Dr. Sleep more than The Shining. I know. And I get that look from everybody I say that to. I look at this like, okay, like Starbucks or The Big Bang Theory. I want to like it so bad.
Yeah.
But I can't. No matter what. I try the different flavors. I try different episodes. But I can't do it. And what we're talking about with It Chapter 2, cinematically, I think It Chapter 2 is far superior, obviously, to the miniseries. I live in Michigan, and up north in Mackinac, we have a giant Paul Bunyan statue. So as a kid, going up there, and I actually just, my mother passed away last year, and we went up there and dumped her ashes there, because that's somewhere we went every year. So we dumped her ashes up there on the mountain. And that Paul Bunyan statue, when I seen it in It Chapter 2, Like, it totally brought me back to being a kid. And I just took my kids up there, like I said, this year, and we dumped the ashes. And my son was like, whoa, is that from It Chapter 2? I was like, no, but it can be in your imagination. So thematically, I love It Chapter 2. But, and again, not shitting on Bill Skarsgård. He did an amazing job as Pennywise.
Yeah, he was great.
But Tim Curry, like you said, he's got the honky nose and he's got that bubbly personality. Just
Kind of
regular.
campy, if you will.
Yeah, I'd be like, hey, you should make me a giraffe. And he'd be like, hey, I should eat giraffe. So now I asked you guys those. Now, yeah, we talked about your first horror movie. Let's talk about real quick. Let's go Scream. I want to know your favorite horror movie. Buddy, let's start with you. You can only watch one horror movie for the rest of your life. What's your favorite? What are you picking?
Ooh, just one. All right.
I'll let you have this.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and deliberate. I would say if I have to choose
Just
one,
going to look at all the movies on the wall right now.
I'm going to probably go with The Thing. The Thing is the John Carpenter Thing. I love that movie so much. I go to it many times a year. Mm-hmm. It's so powerful, and it plays into paranoia. I think that movie is probably the greatest representation of paranoia in any movie. Even with Childs and McCready at the end, I was telling a friend, I go, it plays into the paranoia, where, especially now in this day and age, where you can't trust anyone. You think someone's infected. It just makes you turn on everybody. And I think the movie's terrifying in that regard. If you can't trust yourself, even, who can you trust? And I know when I wrote Colony, that was playing into my mind, where it kind of follows those things of The Thing, those themes like paranoia, just not trusting anybody. Can you trust yourself? So that movie, I would say, is my favorite, though, The Thing, just because it's just so terrifying on so many levels. The score, the cinematography is amazing. Just the long tracking shots, just with the dog walking into the room, and you just see the silhouette, and you don't know what the hell is going on, but you know something bad's about to happen. And then when it does, holy shit.
Yes.
So definitely The Thing. The Thing has structured and shaped my life in so many ways. So that would be my choice.
We're talking about the top 3 movies for me when it comes to practical effects. The Thing, Nightmare on Elm Street, American Werewolf in London.
Oh, yeah.
Those 3 movies, when it comes to practical effects, are just fucking phenomenal. And I'm a huge practical effects guy. I'll take mediocre practical effect over a great CGI. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of movies they do now where they put the CGI in with the practical effects, and it looks really, really good. And if you can do that, more power to you. I want the movie to look as great as possible. But I always reference back to Freddy versus Jason, when the little Jay guy gets cut in half from Jay and Silent Bob, and you see the blood all over. It's so bad looking. It looks so weak. And I will defend that movie to the end of the earth. It's Freddy and Jason in the same movie. I will fight anybody that has anything bad to say about that movie. Unless it's CGI, then I'll agree with you. Anything else, it's an amazing movie. It's perfect. But
that scene was a little whack.
Yeah. Your favorite horror movie, Charlotte. You can only choose one to watch. What are you picking?
Well, since I have a poster of it in my bedroom, I'm going to say Jaws, the original 1975, based on Peter Benchley's novel with John Williams score. I have seen the documentary The Shark Isn't Working. I've read so much about it. And for me, a lot of people say, oh, it's not scary, it looks dated. I'm like, stop it.
Yeah.
For me, it's also the terrifying nature of it is Chief Brody is afraid of the water. And to go out and try to capture the shark, and also the politics in play, the mayor who wants to keep the town open, there's something terrifying about that powerlessness. And what I love about, Colony and a lot of the films that we all love too, is that sense of fear and that I can't do anything about this.
Sure.
It's not a monster movie in the sense of Werewolf in London or even all the Dracula films. I love the 95 Dracula, by the way. But it's a monster movie in the sense of you're against your own people. People are trying to keep the town open. People are dying. And you have to go out when you're terrified of swimming. You probably don't even know how to swim. You're terrified of sharks in the water. And you have to go out and risk your life to stop this thing that has become almost not real in your mind. It's not a human, it's an animal, so it doesn't think the way humans do. And for me, that has always been so frightening. I go I go swimming sometimes, and I'm like looking behind me. I know it's so silly. I used to sail too. Like I used to sail boats in Florida before I went to college, and whenever we capsized the little sailboats, and I stopped way before my father wanted me to. He wanted me to keep sailing. And I'd capsize the boat once. I'm like, Daddy, there's Jaws in the water.
Well, how many times have any of us been swimming and been going, da-dun,
every time.
da-dun. You know, like it's so like that to me, I've talked about this a bunch on here, but the top 3 movies when it comes to the score, Halloween, Jaws, Star Wars. People know those scores. Yeah, even if you don't know the films, you know the scores of those films. And you were talking about Jaws, and you were talking about the sharks not working. Bruce, the shark, I love the fact that shark malfunctioned as much as it did, because I feel like when you finally get to see him, it makes it that much scarier.
And it's that scene where he's biting the kayaker who's trying to help the kids out. And the shark's in the lake, or lake or obituary, I don't remember, but you see that side of the shark just biting his leg, and that made me cry. It's more scary than Quint, because that's the first time you see it. And also that zoom in shot to Brody's face when he sees the blood in the water, that terrified me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it has one of the best improvised lines of all time. I think you're going to need a bigger boat.
Oh yeah, iconic line.
I love the fact that was improvised, and Spielberg was just like, yes!
I couldn't believe it. Spielberg was only 26 when he directed that.
Yeah.
Great movie. Great film.
So
my all-time favorite.
We always end this with a skull count. So Nightmare on Elm Street, buddy, you're ranking 0 to 5 skulls. Where are we putting Nightmare?
I gotta be biased. 5 skulls. I love that movie. It's great.
Anybody that says it's not 5 skulls, man, I'm gonna laugh at them, because there's no way you can give Nightmare anything but 5 skulls,
I
man.
Nightmares about it.
They got it. They get 5 Freddy claws right through the head. The movie is great.
So, The Shining. Charlotte, what are we giving The Shining?
Oh, I'd give it 10 axe hits. But Jaws is if I had to watch one movie the rest of my life, I'd watch that again and again and again.
Can't go wrong with it.
Yeah.
So,
I want to say 20 shark bites.
You guys don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in. It really means a lot. Keep talking horror. Stay what you are, and we'll talk to you guys soon.